Hi everyone, Patricia Worby, Alchemy Therapies here, and another in my ongoing series of conversations with practitioners like me who are passionate about health and healing. And I'm delighted this afternoon, after a little delay, here we are talking with my great friend and colleague, B. Inez, and she describes herself as a naturopath and nutritionist, and she runs her own business, which is called Healthy Bee Naturopathy. And I know she's keen to talk all things gut related. We're going to talk a little bit today about the importance of the gut, about how it can go wrong, about the genetics, and anything else we think about, aren't we? So first of all, thank you so much for agreeing to chat with me today, and it's a delight to see you as always. So can you just tell me, just for those who are watching, how did you get into being a naturopath? What happened to you to kind of lead you on this road?
Okay, so in 1996, I think I was 24 at the time. I've just given my age away there, haven't I? 24 at the time, and I was seemingly, and I'm going to put this in inverted commas, fit and well. And I developed some kind of virus. It felt like flu, and then I started quite quickly to feel lots of strange symptoms like excessive debilitating fatigue, dizziness, lightheadedness, kind of strange neurological symptoms as well, like but mainly kind of fatigue and dizziness were my two main symptoms. And it took me about a year to get diagnosed. And I suppose this is quite relevant at these times because obviously we're hearing about, long COVID and post-viral fatigue. So this isn't a new thing. This has been, around for many years. It just happens that we're talking about it now because more and more people are putting their head above the parapet because, COVID is so publicized in the media. I found myself, fit, active, 24-year-old, kind of struggling to stand up in the shower, going out with my friends, and by 10 o'clock I'd had it. Every time we went out I'd like sit on a wall or something, and I was struggling to kind of walk. Went along to my GP at the time and said, I think I've had glandular fever. And he basically laughed at me and said, if you've had glandular fever, you'd know that you'd had it. And I'm thinking, well, I do know that I've had something. And his advice to me was to go jogging, which faithfully I did, and did that kind of for a few months, really, and ignored it as he told me to, and just thought maybe this is about fitness and maybe I need to get more fit. And then carried on going, bit of a workaholic if I'm honest, basically one day I was at work and I was trying to photocopy a piece of paper, and I couldn't figure out how to get the piece of paper in my hand into the A4 ring binder. It was like my brain had just malfunctioned. Very frightening. Took myself off to A&E. They said, oh, we think you've just got a virus, go and have 3 days rest and you'll be right as rain. But at that point I'd kind of was beginning to realize that the medical profession didn't know what was going on and they didn't have any answers for me. And prior to me becoming ill in that way, I had lots of gut issues as well. So I thought, well, maybe this is all diet related. And I'd always suspected that there was something going on around gluten. And interestingly, one of the GPs on my hunt for a diagnosis actually said to me, you can't have anything wrong with you at the age of 24. You just need to go home and have some home cooking. And I suggest you go home and have some scones.
Oh,
And many years later, it turns out that I'm more than likely celiac. So that was useful advice.
mm,
So this was my kind of, journey, if you like, of trying to get a diagnosis.
mm,
And yeah, it was a journey. Like I say, it took me a year. And then when I finally did get my diagnosis, it was like, well, we don't really know what to do. Sent me on a management program. I got this I think it was a 6-week course in how to manage your symptoms, how to manage your energy, how to pace your energy, which I was always useless at because you know me. You know me, I'm an A-type, I'm a bit of a workaholic, perfectionist, so yeah, really difficult. And then I went on this journey of kind of trying to get the right support and not being able to find it. Back then in the 90s, we were still talking about yuppie flu, and the diagnosis which I eventually got, which was ME, had a lot of negative connotations. I mean, there's so much evidence out there now and so much research to show that, if you are going to separate the body into body and into physical and mental health, and obviously it is a physical health condition, and there's lots of research out there now to show that. Although one thing I have come to realize over the years is that the mind and body aren't separated and that they work together, which of course is your field of expertise. So I went down the alternative therapy route, really. Saw lots of different nutritionists, did lots of different diets, and nothing really seemed to be working. And it wasn't until things got really bad. I became completely dependent on carers. I was completely isolated. I didn't see any other people other than my carers, really. And then my care package broke down, so I had lots of issues around, carers who were abusive, either financially or mentally or emotionally. And so, I didn't realise that actually until years later, when I started working in disability rights and did a safeguarding course in abuse, and realised that I'd had pretty much all of the different types of abuse through my own carers. And my care package fell apart, and what happened was this amazing angel from the Stockport ME group, who I will be eternally grateful for. I didn't know her from Adam. She took me in and looked after me for 3 months, and we became great friends. And she fluctuated. She kind of had remissions and relapses. And during one of her relapses, one of the things that she tried was naturopathic nutrition. And I'm like, well, I've seen nutritionists, what's the difference? I've done all the diets. And she's like, no, this is different. This is about not just what you're putting into your body, but about what you can get out, about the toxicity that you can get out of your body. And these naturopathic detox techniques, which were life-changing. And so at this point, she'd become, during one of her relapses, she'd become paralyzed. And she'd been like that for about a year. And when she discovered naturopathic nutrition, within literally a few weeks of doing this technique, these techniques, she was cycling up hills. I'm like, this is amazing. And suddenly I was sitting up and I was listening. So that was the start of my journey with naturopathic nutritionists. Started seeing a naturopathic nutritionist, and he managed to get me going to the toilet again. He managed to get me off all of my prescription medications. He managed to get my sleep back, because I hadn't slept for 8 years for more than 3 hours a night. And that was on sleeping tablets. So, I was doing all the kind of medication route, and it just wasn't working, and I wasn't getting anywhere. I just kept hitting brick walls.
yeah.
And this was like somebody had switched the light on. So yeah, that's how I got into it, really. And then very slowly through my own spiritual Buddhist practice, and also I did something called the lightning process as well. A combination of all of those things basically got me back to a point where I could then go back to work. I could study even, which was amazing because I'd lost the ability to read for 8 years. So I got my cognitive function back, and was able to study and qualify as a naturopathic nutritionist myself. And if I'm honest, I didn't do it to go out and help other people. I did it to keep myself on the straight and narrow, because I wanted to understand why I was still doing all these things. Because when you're so ill, if you're desperate enough, you'll try anything. And I guess when I started to improve, I wasn't so desperate anymore. So things started to slip, So I wanted to learn why really. Why is this important? And, I mean, you love learning as well. It's that big passion when you start to learn about how the body works and how the body and mind and spirit are all connected. You just don't want to stop. And I don't think we can ever learn everything. There's just so much information out there. So yeah, that started my journey. And then by some bizarre circumstances, I was never intending to qualify, but then during a period in my life I actually had the time where I could take my exams, and I thought, well, I've got nothing better to do, I might as well. And then before I knew it, I was working in the field, and now I'm so passionate about it. And my passion is to get the word out there that people have power over their own bodies, right? And when you get a diagnosis, that if I'd waited for, and this is no slight on the medical profession and the medical model, it absolutely has its place, but when you have a long-term chronic illness and there's no answers in that route, it's like, well, what do? Do you accept that that's your lot, or do you look at, how does my body work? How can I do things naturally? How can I optimize that innate healing ability that my body's got? Because all of us have got an innate healing ability, and our body's always trying to do its best for us, which is really confusing when you're riddled with symptoms. You're like, well, how is this best? So yeah, it's kind of like working all of that out, really. Yeah. And I look at health like a big jigsaw. In fact, pretty much any condition that anyone comes to me with, it's like, let's look at the jigsaw on the table and figure out which are the bits of your jigsaw that have caused you to get to that state. And for me, with Emmy, I mean, we met through the Chrysalis Effect, didn't we? And when I found the Chrysalis Effect, it was like, well, this is everything I've learned over over 2 decades put together in a program. I kind of wish I'd thought of it first, really. Yeah. Me too. There's so many bits of that jigsaw, and you have to look at all of them. You can't just do the nutrition piece and not deal with, I mean, for me, and everybody's different, but for me, I had a lot of trauma from my childhood, which obviously we've worked together on. And that when you've got trauma, it sets your system up for fight or flight. And when you're in fight and flight, you're suppressing your immune system, you're suppressing your digestive system. Your digestive system is how you get all those nutrients into your body that makes your body work. So for me, I think that was kind of it was always a piece of the jigsaw that I knew was there, but I didn't want to deal with it. I didn't really want to admit that it was a piece of the jigsaw. But when I did my naturopathy course, one of the things we learned was that any kind of emotions have a physical, a biochemical I can't think of the word, you know, the imprint on your
Imprint.
cellular,
Mm.
on your cellular health, really.
Process,
So
yeah.
we've got 75 trillion cells in our body,
Mm.
and when we've got trauma, that trauma stores in those cells as toxicity.
Yeah.
And so when I realized that, it was like, yeah, it's not just about having a clean diet and eating health on a plate, and
No,
you know,
it's a lot more, isn't it? I mean, I think just hearing your story is so inspiring, you know, to know that you were ill for so long, that you got to the point where you were dependent on carers. And I know the full story there, and it's quite shocking. And here you are now, you know, functioning as, you know, a person who actually helps other people to get through that a lot quicker than you did, you know. You've made so many valuable points there. I didn't want to interrupt you because you were just coming up with absolute gold dust there. You know,
Can I just interrupt you? Actually, sorry, I've the lack of foresight here. I haven't plugged my battery in. Just give me 2 seconds before the whole interview collapses.
Okay. Yeah. You on yet? Yeah. So
right, we have power.
We have power. Actually, that's a good point. So we have power over our bodies, or power with our bodies, if you like, when we take control, as you said, taking responsibility for your own health and healing. And the whole idea that that sickness is a sort of thing that happens randomly is actually being overthrown now by this whole idea that you basically have these inputs that kind of predispose you to certain things, and the kinds of diseases you get are actually they're not random either. All right, so you mentioned you're an A-type, you're a stress junkie, okay, a bit like me. You've grown up sort of thinking, I've got to get ahead, I've got to survive, I've got to do it all. And you're sort of juggling loads of things in your life and not really realizing how much that impacts your body, which is sort of screaming at you. And it'll start low key, dizziness, insomnia, those sorts of things. And then it will really knock you over, which is what happened to you, isn't it? And so amazing that you found those answers. And I mean, my story's similar. I'm not going to go into mine. Everyone's heard mine. But finding my route through to this kind of fantastic holistic model of biopsychosocial understanding. You know, it's not just the gut. It's not just your lifestyle. It's your predispositions from your childhood history, your genetics. You know, there's so much in there. The toxins you mentioned. Toxins are such a big part of what's happening to a lot of people at the moment, along with stress. I think they're the two biggest factors right now for why so many people are sick. Long COVID particularly, you know, nobody's saying, you know, what happened to you before you got ill. You know, where were you in your life? What were you juggling? What things haven't you been looking at? Because it's the stuff that you don't look at, which for me was my emotional life, you know, that are the final input, if you like, that you really need to get round to. So it's amazing what you've done, and just wonderful hearing your passion, because that really comes across. So wonderful. And tell me,
there's always a trigger, isn't there? There's always a trigger. And you're absolutely right. We're not hearing about, you know, every single client that comes to me, regardless of what their health condition is, you can always find a trigger. And it might not be stress, it might not be emotional. I mean, I work with mycotoxin, mould illness, you know. It could be overtraining, you know. Some people train. You can exercise too much, you know, and that gives rise to an overproduction of cortisol, which can then also suppress the immune system. And we're not looking at all of these background causes as to why so many people are getting ill. We're just looking at a virus currently.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And you're right.
There's many other people that are getting that virus and not even getting symptoms. So we need to be looking at why. Why is this person and not this person?
Absolutely. And I reckon the gut is one of the major reasons. I'd say the health of the innate immune system, which is in your gut, which is the first line defense, is probably why some people sail through it and others get really poorly. So take us through a little bit about what do you do? Well, how do you assess the gut? What do you do?
So, well, there's so many things that can, go out of balance, if you like, with the gut. So, people come to me with acid reflux. They might come to me with symptoms like belching or bloating. And I basically, when somebody comes to me, I take a full case history. So asking them lots of questions that give me clues. It's a little bit like being a detective, really.
Yeah.
And these seemingly irrelevant and sometimes quite personal questions will kind of piece together the bits of the jigsaw as to, what's going on. I also use functional lab testing, so I might do stool testing to look for things like parasites, how well somebody's breaking down their food, whether they are short on stomach acid, whether they're short on pancreatic enzymes, whether there might be a yeast overgrowth, whether there might be a bacterial overgrowth. And generally, also we can get like pathogenic, like disease causing bacteria in our gut that can kind of overgrow and or shouldn't be there at all. And so it's looking at that whole ecosystem. And
Beautiful.
this is the amazing thing about years ago it was like we need to kill all bacteria. Bacteria is bad, bacteria is the enemy. And now we know that we have this amazing ecosystem in our gut that is just so important for the health of our body. And that these bacteria, we've got more bacteria than we've got cells, but like infinitely more. And we're teeming with bacteria on our skin, in our gut, and they all help us with our immune system. And what really scares me in current times is everyone's washing all that bacteria off their skin. I'm not saying we shouldn't wash our hands, obviously. But soap and water is perfect.
It's the antibacterial hand washing all the time and then spreading into the gut where you inadvertently then touch your face when you're putting on masks or taking them off or whatever. I've done a webinar on that one, but I really feel that's so well put that we need to be working in balance and in harmony with our internal ecosystem. I mean, I wrote a book on this because I was so passionate about it. We can't see microbes as the enemy, and that includes viruses as well. Viruses have a purpose. They're there to clear up junk, heavy metal toxicity and so on. So we kind of got to start to get in balance with our environment and I guess, so diet is a really big factor, but you're looking much broader, aren't you? Tell me about, I know we've got about 10 minutes, but tell me a bit about mycotoxin sensitivity, because that sounds fascinating to me.
Yeah, so, my journey's been a long one and I'm still on it. And one of the things that obviously I am way much better than I've ever been, but I'm not where I want to be health-wise, not 100%. And you know me, A-type, I'm aiming for the top.
That's it. Onward.
So I discovered mycotoxins last year when I went to see a functional medicine practitioner in the States, over a remote consultation. And when I told them all the symptoms that I had, they were like, you sound like you've got Lyme disease and you sound like you've got mycotoxins. I'm like, okay. So years ago, somebody did tell me they thought I had Lyme disease, but they gave me some antibiotics. I couldn't even tolerate them.
No.
And I pushed it to one side because I thought, well, I don't really think this is working. So years later, there's still a question mark over the Lyme situation, which I'm currently investigating. But the mycotoxins, he said, go off, do this urine test and come back. It will tell us whether you've got these mycotoxins in your body. They're produced by mould. Like, right, okay. And I've always struggled with kind of like fungal infections and, you know, yeast overgrowth in the gut, and never really been able to get on top of it. And that's why I went to see him, because I'd heard him on a Candida summit. Yeah, went and did the test, and sure enough, I have mycotoxins in my system. So I'm like, he told me a couple of things to do, and I thought, yeah, okay, did them, didn't really think anything else of it. And very slowly in the background, particularly in the last kind of 6 months, when we've been in the house a lot and I work from home, and you know, I found that actually some of my old symptoms were starting to come back. And then by chance I listened to a webinar. Nothing's by chance, is it? But
not really.
I listened to a webinar about SIBO, which I specialise in SIBO, and gut health in general. And this lady was talking about, Dr. Jill Christer, she's called. She was talking about mycotoxins and how they're related to SIBO. And every single symptom she mentioned, it was like, yeah, okay, that's me. And one of the things she said was, when you wake up in the morning and you feel like you've got a hangover and you haven't drunk for years. And that was one of my ME symptoms that never went away. And I nobody could ever tell me why it was happening.
Right. Really interesting.
I started to notice this in a couple of my clients as well. And I thought, do you know what? I'm going to go and do her practitioner course. So I did her mycotoxins for practitioners course, and became one of her qualified like mycotoxin practitioners. And these mould can be invisible, and it can be visible. But basically the key is any water damage. If you've got water damage, if you've ever had a flood that's been there for longer than 24 hours, it's quite possible that you've got hidden mould in your property. And the only way you can get it out is to cut it out. You can't go and spray it with bleach. It actually makes the problem worse, because it kills the mould, and they break up into fragments, which you then breathe straight into your lung tissue. And this stuff's nasty, you know. It can cause kind of brain tumours and cancers and kidney damage. And I think for a lot of fatigue conditions, this can be one of the missing pieces of the jigsaw that often gets overlooked.
I'm sure of it.
And it certainly is in mine. And you know, you've introduced me to another wonderful woman who's also found that this is another piece of her jigsaw. And we seem to be twins from another life.
That's right.
Similar journey, both kinds of trying to get on top of this mycotoxin piece.
It's worth saying that not everyone is mold sensitive, isn't it? Because some people, you could have two people living in a house that was moldy, okay, and one will be like, I don't know what the problem is, what's the problem? And the other is having these terrifically awful symptoms. And obviously then you doubt your own sanity if you're the one having the symptoms and you're the person you live with isn't. But that is a normal. It's a biochemical difference, isn't it? In some people,
it can be a genetic variation, or it can actually be, you know, a toxic load on the body. That means that another person, you know, like somebody with ME, for example, or possibly fibromyalgia, they may have like such a toxic load on the body that they're much more susceptible. There may be Lyme mixed into the picture, you know, and Lyme makes it much more difficult to deal with mould. And then what mould does is it suppresses the immune system. And to be honest, I have doubted my own sanity. It's like, I know this is in my bloodstream because it's come out in my urine test. But it's not like you can see it. I mean, there are bits in my home, but it's not like you can... No,
it's not visible in that way.
No, you know, people aren't walking into my house and falling over with asthma or anything. So you do start to doubt your own sanity, but trust me, having done her practitioner course, this stuff is serious. And it really needs to be got on top of. And what they call us... what they call us is the canary in the gold. I keep saying coal mine. So we're the ones that get sick first. But actually, mould is not good for anyone.
No, it's just that we show the symptoms before other people. That's a really good point, actually. So people, if you're listening and you want to contact me here, because I'm sure a lot of you will be resonating with this information, I could talk to you for hours. I think we're going to have to do another one. But if people want to contact you, how would they do that?
So you can have a look at my website, which is Healthy Bee. So that's healthybe.co.uk. And there's a contact form on there. I'm on Facebook, Healthy Bee Naturopathy. I think my Instagram has got the same name. Or you can drop me an email at info@healthybe.co.uk. And I offer 30-minute health and wellbeing reviews. I work with people on package basis because, as you know, with any chronic illness, you can't just go and see a practitioner for one session and then think that after however many years, that's one session is going to fix it.
No, it doesn't work.
I do programs with people and you know, we build a health and wellbeing program together. So the 30-minute health and wellbeing reviews are just to see if we're right to work together. I explain a bit about how I work, and judge, you know, as well whether that person is ready to kind of take that step as well.
Yeah.
Because
Brilliant.
not everybody is. So
no, they're not. And I do a similar approach, but what we're planning to do, I know in the future, letting the cat out of the bag a little bit here, is we're hoping to combine our talents, as it were, and maybe offer sort of more of an online clinic type arrangement where we've got access to different therapies dependent on where someone is in their journey. As you said, at some points you might want to be doing nutrition, at other points you might want to be looking at stress or trauma, at other points you might want to be looking at the physical structure of your body, or, you know, there are so many different ways into healing, aren't there? And
absolutely.
It's just brilliant to chat with you. Thank you so much. And I know everyone's going to love this interview. So but yeah, let's do it again sometime. And
it's gone so quickly.
I know. How did half an hour go? All right, but lovely to speak with you. Anyone who's listening wants to contact you can do so, and anybody who wants to contact me, alchemytherapies.co.uk. I deal with emotional and kind of unresolved trauma, usually relational, and that's my passion. So great.
And can I just add to that I have referred clients on to Patricia, having seen her myself, and she's amazing at what she does, and has certainly got me to face things that I buried under the carpet for many, many years and wouldn't even inspect, in a really untraumatizing way. Because I think sometimes when you do trauma work, the fear is that you can get re-traumatized. Yeah. And certainly that's not been the case. So,
thank you so much. Thank you. No, thank you. I mean, it's great to hear. Obviously, safety is really important, how you work, and being empathetic about how easy it is to be re-traumatized when you're dealing with such deep issues. So anyway, we're on the same page, I think. All right. I'm going to say bye-bye for now, everyone, and talk soon.